Dimora, tundu dimora. Weye aseti mawudu, awudu gitumba, kambanane, goma ya mababu, ema aguero, nyatiti kambanane, tumora. Color mora, uno sacanera de goyumi, uno guara de guelo tumi, coroda duele, nyatitilu mora, mora, color mora. Mora, campanale mora. Mora, campanale mora. Golomora, nyatiti golomora. Antete mawudu, okilanona nabeba kitu gani? Rafiki yangu Beja, rafiki yangu nabeba kitu gani? Kambanane, ngoma ya mababu, ngoma yetu ile ya zamani, nawakilisha kokote Afrika. Mora, Gololuo mora, Kamba mora, Nyatitiluo mora.
Thank you. Salimia mama. Yeah, telling mama that she should not be worried. It is in Swahili. Nasaka pesa. That's why I'm not around the village. I'm just in the city. But I'm an urban Africana. I represent the traditional setup in the city. With my identity.
Nacheza ngoma, mama nawakilisha na ngoma ya zamani, kambanane, ngoma ya mababu, mama ninacheza ngoma, ndio maana sitokei ocha, hakika nikicheza ngoma nitapata pesa, nirudi kwetu, kwetu ni kijiji, nijenge nyumba nizalie wana wakuize nyanya, na mimi baba kwa sasa bado nakitaka pesa. Ololo. Niwakilishe Afrika na ngoma yetu, ngoma ni ya mababu.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kake. Another round for him. So, maybe I want to introduce the group CEO of Africa Stocking, Sam Bikandi. So you can just say hi and talk about Africa Stocking in a bit.
Thank you, Sam. So my name is Sam Bikandi. I'm the CEO at Africa Stocking. We're all about empowering software developers, so creating opportunities for developers to bring their dreams to life. And we believe that developers can create the future. They're already creating the future. So they're a very powerful constituent for us, and we believe that if we create the right environment, they can create the right future for us. So we're all about finding the right platforms that allow them to create that future for us. So it's very exciting to have you all here, and to have our visitors, Angela and Jackie, right? I got it, Jackie? Yes. And Martin, who I think a lot of you know. So we do this very frequently, so I'd encourage you to join our community if you want to get exposed to technology and what we do, some of the products we have. So we have all manner of conversations here. And we'd love for you guys to come and tell us what conversations you want to have, because ours is a very inclusive community. I think we all share an undying love for this continent. I think that's the one thing that you find. We just love Africa so much, and we want to do everything we can so that we change Africa in the next few weeks. It can be done, guys. So. It's lovely to have you here, and I'll introduce, I'll have Martin come up. So Martin, I've known Martin for many years. Martin is the reason this company exists in many ways. So we started a program, I went to MIT, and we started a program that made me start to love the continent again. Because I left this continent, I didn't love this continent growing up. It wasn't very kind to me. I think many of us can relate. So I left with a half, and I was excited to be away, but Martin was like, hey, remember where you came from. So we started this amazing program where MIT students will come back. And I remember the first time I went to a beach in Africa was in Accra, Nabali Beach, because of Martin. And I had the best time. I think I almost fell in love. You know, like I had a lot of first experiences in Accra, and the program was so mind-blowing, eye-opening. And today our head of Ghana actually went through that program. So he runs our office in Ghana. So the founders of this company all went through that program, and when we graduated, there was that niggling, there was that voice in the back of your head that tells you, charity begins at home. So why don't you go home and start exploring? And I think we're coming home in a big way, and we're finding home, and we're finding ourselves at home, and that's the most incredible and spiritual journey for us. So very excited to have the team here, and Martin, take it over.
And
Thank you so
a
much.
question for you just before I take over. Who's that man there? Have you ever
Oh,
met
yes.
him? If you ever meet him, who's
So, Calestous Juma. So Martin will do a better introduction. So Calestous Juma was a kind man. He was a professor at Harvard and MIT, and a Kenyan, and a great Kenyan, who we all knew about. I only had the luck of meeting him once. I went to his house for Thanksgiving, where he used to host all these events. And I remember seeing him sitting somewhere. There was something about him. I didn't get a chance to speak with him, but I felt the kindness of him. So he was a great man. I'm just learning more about him, and I'm excited to be here as part of commemorating 5 years since his passing. So he created space for us, and I think Martin and the team here will tell us more about his work.
Thank you very much, Sam, both for that introduction and also opening the doors to your premises here to us. Good evening, everyone. So we want today to be a bit of a relaxed evening. How many of you know Calestous Juma? Just by show of hands. Just expecting about 3 or 4 or 5 good brothers here. Some of the people I was expecting and hoping to be here have arrived. How many of you are hearing about Calestous Juma for the first time? And that was our hope. We were hoping you were going to be the majority. We are hoping you will leave this evening transformed. I'll tell you something small about Calestous Juma. I've prepared some notes that I'm going to talk through. But I wanted to request Mukta just to stand where he is, and I'll request somebody to pass the microphone all the way to the back.
No, I'll come there.
You come, karibu sana. Brian, I'll request you also to come to the front. Karibu sana. Just come. There's a generation here I desire for us to inspire, because they have really inspired me. Jacqueline, I'll also ask you to come and join us at the front. I know we're going to be together later. And Angela, I'm going to ask you also to come to the front. So the one thing we all have in common, I have it's still my BCom cohort, but they did their final exam earlier this week on Monday. So this is almost like a rite of passage, and I've got some former BCom students, Amadi and Speciosa. At one time or another, believe it or not, we were all students, just like you having to do final exams. And all of us studied under Calestous Juma in one way or another, or in programs that Calestous was part of. For those of us standing in front, in a sentence, 2, maybe 3, who was Calestous Juma to you in class? We'll start with Mota.
Yes, habari ya jioni. Before I begin, what I was to say, atatuambia kwa nini nitoroka Africa. Now, very interesting observation.
Good. Kwa nini unitoroka Africa?
So,
How much time do you have?
Calestous was a very kind man. Calestous was very passionate about change. And I had the privilege of being the only Kenyan at that time at the Harvard Kennedy School as a student. When I was introduced to him by one of the professors, he said he knows about me. For the admission, I think he went through a lot of issues that I was doing here. From that time, he was not my professor, he was like my brother. One story I want to share. One time, usually we have professors taking students for lunch to bond about this. So a few of us Africans went to the restaurant, and the students, those we took out for lunch, none of them was an African. And when we went in, we sat upon our team. And we said, Calestous is a team there. So after we finished, because I was relatively rich, I took the bill. the students took offense. They took the bill because they are prepared to share and have time with him. Then he said, wait, there's something you don't know about African socialism. There's something you don't know about African kindness. There's something that you don't know about African empathy. Actually, me and Mukhtar will be more offended if you don't allow us. Then the story after that, we need another forum like this. Thank you very much.
Asante sana Mukhtar. Angela?
So, Martin, I don't know if I qualify. I was not a student in class.
You in the non-profit?
Okay.
You are. Calestous did not only teach in class, Calestous always taught.
This is true. But you asked for one sentence, and because I'll tell my story about what Calestous did for me and for my colleagues in a little bit. But I would say that in one sentence, Calestous was a generous visionary. And the visionary part was that he saw in people what he wanted for Africa. He saw it within them. And that was what he was. His spirit was so generous, he gave, and he was generous in what he saw in people.
Thank you, Angela. Jackie?
So for me, I am a lawyer first of all, but I knew Calestous by virtue of my interest in innovation and development. So when I took his class, I was a cross-registered student. That means you can take a class in any other Harvard school, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So for me, I would say in his class, I felt like I had a voice. And that's because the environment at Harvard Law School is a bit, it's not as warm or motivating as, and I'm not discouraging, is there any lawyer here? No. But I'm not discouraging anyone. I'm not discouraging anyone, of course not. Because I'm still a student there, yeah. So going to his class, especially having knowledge on intellectual property, and being the only one in the class who had that knowledge, and also being a Kenyan, he pushed me to always ask me, Jackie, what do you think? And tell us. And I was very, at the time I was not very outspoken as I probably am, not even now. And he really nurtured me, so I'd say he nurtured me. He was warm, we would talk in class and after class about Kenyan elections, because at the time it was 2018, yeah, just fresh from elections. So I would call him a very warm teacher. Yeah, that's how it's done.
Thank you, Brian.
This is very interesting because you've taken this several years. You've taken it back several years. So my background is comp science. I came back to do my PhD here, so I'm at University of Nairobi. And I have a very keen interest in innovation. So anything that has innovation in it, especially tech innovation, I jump into it. Actually, the startup I'm working on is tech innovation. But now that I think about it, I actually realize that it was Calestous who defined innovation to me the first time. The very first year I was out there, so I was at MIT.
And before that,
Before that, I was struck. So I did my grad school out there, and during my first year, fresh off the boat, you probably slapped by new culture, and then you end up actually realizing that a lot of the stuff they're studying at grad school level is a couple years off of what you're interested in, or basically they're studying things that in Africa, at that time they were talking about carbon emissions and all that, and we are trying to solve basic problems in Africa. So I really found myself absolutely lost. I was like in the wrong crowd. But the interesting bit is, during that first year of grad school, I had, I think, 3 or 4 meetings with him. He was not my supervisor. He was in a totally different university at MIT, and he was in Harvard. But he made time and told me come to my office, and I had 3 or 4 meetings with him, and after every meeting I gave him a book. I discovered that he had written a book at books. So in actually all that, he helped me understand innovation. He actually framed my understanding of innovation, which was, now that I think about it, I take it so much for granted that I just talk about it, and I think we have a lot of interesting conversations with Martin as well. But now that you mention it, going back, he's the one who actually shaped my thoughts about innovation. So for me, he's a father in many ways. He's a father with a father, intellectual father, and I think through his books, he remained a father in many ways to quite a lot. So there are a lot of stories included there, because in the second year, actually took a class cross registered. Very interesting class. Started college for the first time, and his class was like a meeting room. It was round, so there was no head of the table, which was crazy. Because then anyone could say anything and anyone could speak. And everyone's opinion was valuable, and it really challenged you to kind of, bring out yourself, which I found to be very interesting. Very different from what we had experienced, where the lecturer stands at the front and tells you. So that was also very high. Anyway, many stories. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Brian. I want her to set the stage for us. I'll just ask Angela and Jackie to remain behind Mukta, Brian, Asanteni Sana. Hopefully you've gotten a feel for who Calestous is. So just Google the name Calestous Juma. Exactly. Wako kwa Twitter pia. He has a profile on Wikipedia. So as the evening carries on, you get a feel of who this gentleman is, and for my students, you'll understand why I teach the way I do. Jackie, I'll ask you to be on this side. I want to be closer to AT and technology for a particular reason. I want to recognize at least 2 other individuals. Sam, thank you very much. I got to speak to your entire team. Graham, Kimathi, who's with podcast, I think handling issues of podcast. I had their 4 sons at Africa's Talking.
I wonder why.
You wonder why? And then there was Kevin, and there was Anne at the back. Spectacular team that has helped to put this event together. There's also Nyambura Maina. I know she was not sure I was going to recognize her. Nyambura Maina has been with Kenjen. She was in the US for an entire stretch. And Nyambura Maina is here looking for coders. Coders for apps. So I told her, Mr. Weza hiyo kazi. We'll hear something about that. Speciosa and Amadi are also looking for coders. They have a startup and they need people who can work on apps for them. They've done a fantastic job with is Kijana Jibebe Shule? Jibebe Twende Shule. So they're working on an interesting company that makes education accessible through transport for the underserved communities. And then there's Eddie. Eddie was what you call Index 1 in BBIT. He was yes. So Eddie's an entrepreneur in residence here at Africa is Talking, and he also operates out of Strathmore. Beldin, thank you very much for being here with us. Beldin worked on the numbers of a company called Zeraki. We were there yesterday. The CJLF team got to meet Beldin, and Isaac had shared he was not going to be able to make. Isaac, thank you very much. You're very ably represented by Beldin. I'm looking at him in the future. So, since we are virtual. So, there are others who are here as friends. It's not Joseph, it's Joseph. Is it Joseph? Yeah. Joseph, good. Joseph, sikuwa nimekusahau. Yeah, Joseph, when I was starting the business model creation evaluation class with his colleague Philip, who is not here, they were discussing student politics right at the beginning, that first, second week. Joseph is big into issues of sustainability. Put together a massive group courtesy of the VC. I think there was some support from the VC, and have a lot of fascinating ideas that some of my colleagues, Rosemary Okello Olale, Dr. Mombi Washira, are focusing on. And when we had the SME conference, Joseph coordinated for some e-bikes or to be displayed near the auditorium. I hope I have not forgotten any of the people I had invited. I see at least 2 new faces. You get a chance to introduce yourself. One in a yellow top and one in with a set of red headphones, and the gentleman in black. Everybody else I've met before this. So we're in a family. Let it be conversational. Je ne parle pas français très bien, mais je pense que Madame Angela va vous introduire. Okay, I really massacred the French. But we have Kevin. I have to make sure I get the pronunciation correct. Who's an intern with the Calestous Juma Legacy Foundation. Angela is the executive director, and Jackie sits on the board as the secretary. I tried to pay attention. I could introduce each of my students here, and I'll do it just for the sake. Patrick, Kate, Titus, Matthew, Ajulu, Faith, and Masindi. I could also tell you their grades for the 3 semesters. I could tell you their grades, I could tell you their performance. I'm doing that very intentionally because I've been informed people love their names. Don't you love your name? Don't you love your name? And it's one of the things Sam has taught me. Every time I watch him speaking, he's done a few videos. So I watched some of your videos. Teddy will join us a little bit later. That was who Juma was. So if any of you will be a teacher one day, I want you to remember one thing. Remember your students' names. If you interact with anybody, I want you to remember their names. Do we have anybody from Great Lakes University? Kisumu. Good. Can you introduce yourself? You are the one person who is usually silent at these events.
My name is Oliver Olo. I teach students at the Great Lakes University of Kisumu. I also do film and documentary and concept photography. I'm working for Africa Software.
Good. Thank you, Oliver. Oliver took a photo of Teddy and I, and she's not here, but Jessica Kolako, last week or earlier this week, just outside here. And he's helping tell this story. I also want us to remember we are part of a story. Okay? So I want to tell you something small about who Calestous was. We are setting the stage for Angela to tell us about the foundation. And to do that well, on your phone or on a piece of paper or whatever you used to write, and for those who are online, I want you to write down 2 things. Who are you? Not your name, but are you a techie? Are you a businessman? Are you a social scientist? Who are you? Let's take a moment and write that down. Even the team that helped put the event together. Who are you? Then the second question, who do you desire to be? Those may not be the same things. Who are you and who do you desire to be? We'll revisit that at the end of today's conversation. What I'm hoping is that by the time we are done this evening, you have transitioned from who you are to who you want to be. And I hope today's excuse is what leads you down that path. I want to tell you a little bit about my story and the different touch points with Calestous Juma. So around 2005, I was 5 years out of college. I was based in the city of Chicago in the state of Illinois in the US. At that point, I'd been in the US for about 9 years. I graduated from MIT in 2000. I had gone into my first job in the tech sector. By 2001, the dot-com bubble burst. So many of us were rendered jobless. So for 3 months, I was looking for a job. So if any of you have lost a job, I know what that feels like. In a community in Chicago, there's the MIT alumni community, the MIT Club of Chicago, and most specifically the Black alumni of MIT, embraced me and asked me, come and help us because you know some tech, we want you to maintain websites for us. Now, by that 2005, we had started up, welcome Teddy, great to see you here. Teddy will be brought up to speed by Speciosa, so she'll share with you what's happened all evening. Speciosa, if you don't mind, I think you may have met Teddy as one of your guest speakers one of the semesters in class. By 2005, the program that Sam mentioned, the MIT Africa Internet Technology Initiative, MIT AITI, was about 9 years old. MIT AITI is currently rebranded to MIT GSL, MIT Global Startup Labs. And it's gone global, but this is a concept we started in a dorm room at MIT. There was a house, I think it might have been Sam's house, Barton Corner. Yes, so Barton, I think Barton Third, for those from MIT who are watching this later. And in a small dorm room, a colleague of mine, Solomon Asefa, who leads IBM Labs out of South Africa, Paul Njoroge, who's based in the UK, and I and my brother Eric Litonga was in the room, sat down and conceptualized this thing because at that time the craze was doing tech to make money. So for those of you from my time in the 90s, if I mention Aisi Makatiani, I mentioned the Gashora Mburus, I mentioned the Peter Orondos, Karanja Gakio, those were the big names at that time. And while we were at MIT, we figured we could not start a company, but we could start an initiative that drove change. I'd spent summer my second year in China in 1998. I'd spent a summer my junior year in Japan, just south of Tokyo, Chigasaki. And so this idea that as students in university, you could go to a different country and drive change and build organizations was quite inspiring. What we didn't realize then was that those ideas would generate and inspire individuals to do the kind of amazing things Sam just talked about. And it's my hope that in this room today, in 10 years, one of you will be talking about how you were hosted at Africa is Talking, and there was this very interesting group speaking, and you realized, you know what, I can actually do this. But you must always remain humble. You should be able to walk and someone passes by you and they can stop you and ask you for help. Most people are not humble, most people are not accessible. So back to 2005, I've worked in the tech sector, worked with amazing companies, did cutting edge things. All the biggest global brands you can think of, Walmart, the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, Kraft Foods. At some point, I found myself restless. We've been doing the same thing over and over again, tech, business, and inwardly you tell yourself, there must be more. And maybe some of you are in that place now. And then I come across an interesting Nation article, an interesting series of Nation articles. At work, I had this big monitor, I was a computer monitor, I was managing a help desk for a tech system. I used to troubleshoot. People call me from around the US, around the world. I can't log in, help me change my password. The workflow should have made sure this set of attachments in a file arrived at us, it hasn't worked, and I'd have to troubleshoot. It was fascinating work until it got boring. And many of you are doing the same thing over and over again in a cubicle, in a classroom, in a place, and you're saying, there must be something out there. I want to encourage you to write, because Professor Calestous Juma diligently used to write in the nation newspapers. So for those of us in Chicago who had no idea what was happening in Nairobi, we read an article and he's talking about all these fascinating things. And I told myself, okay, there's a way out. I checked where he went to school and all those details, Kennedy School, and I said, I'm going to apply and shift gears. I trained as a mechanical engineer, worked in IT consulting, moved into public policy. And the one thing I told myself was, this AITI program we have done, there must be a better way of running it. And here is a gentleman who seems to understand this better way of learning it. So I applied, got into Harvard Kennedy School in 2006, 6 years after finishing my bachelor's degree. So the one advice I have for everybody in the room, the entrepreneurs especially, it's okay to work. I know. It's okay to work, and when you work, give it your best, and you will get bored. Even when you get bored, keep working, keep going. So fast forward from Chicago, after 4 years at MIT, 6 years in Chicago, I found myself back in Boston, Cambridge. Calestous Juma made a point of knowing each African student at the university. Hence Ogle's words, hence Brian's words, hence Angela's words. Angela's boss was very close to Calestous, but Calestous wanted to know about Angela because of her boss in the NGO you worked in. Jackie, your stories about your time with Calestous up until the very end and the Thanksgiving party at his home, Calestous made a point of knowing his students. Now, in my case, the Kennedy School gave me an opportunity to learn about public policy. Calestous had just, Professor Juma had just stepped down from serving on the National Economic and Social Council, which is responsible for creating Kenya's Vision 2030. Calestous was part of that inaugural team. He taught me about innovation, just like Brian. I took his class. He supervised my PhD. My co-author, Michael Su, was from Taiwan. His dad was a VC, probably who got into the early rounds of Facebook. Calestous Juma made us work very hard and publish papers. So one of my published papers looks at East African community in the US using US census data. So with my two co-authors, Paulson Marina and Michael, who at that point was working, taking his PhD, or had done his PhD, was working in Boston. Calestous actually made us finish the course, sit down together and put together a paper that was published and we defended in a conference, presented rather, and until today it has some very interesting insights. Calestous, towards the end, Professor Juma asked him what courses I should take. So I was doing a master's in public policy. He insisted I should take classes that touched on operations. Because for many of us, it was not clear, should we come back to Kenya? There's a common thing, when you're in the US, Kenya is this very far away place. Should I come back to Kenya? And if I come back to Kenya, how will I plug in all these things I was taught? So he told me, go take a course with, at that time, Professor Guy Stewart, that teaches you how to execute. And for those I work with, I'm very big on details in getting things done. Calestous Juma also tickled my fancy on issues of entrepreneurship. He made sure he always talked about innovation and entrepreneurship. And so soon after finishing in 2008, we started a company with my colleague, Kiribania Moredi, Nairobi capital. It's slightly over 10, 11 years old. I worked in Harvard for about 2 years in the treasury function under his guidance. And then Strathmore was starting the business school around that time. Earlier today and yesterday, Masinda and Faith joined me. We had a strategic planning session for Strathmore Business School, which is over 200 staff strong. It started in one of the rooms next to the library at Strathmore. And I always used to consult Professor Juma. What do you think? And when I was stuck and not very sure, he'd say, why don't you think about this? Why don't you try it this way? That was Juma. I fast forward to where I am today. I'm finalizing my PhD, hopefully in another year, a year and a half at the University of Pretoria, where my supervisor, it turns out, was a close relation to Professor Juma, and more importantly, took over from Professor Juma as the second executive director at an organization where I serve on the board, the African Center for Technology Studies. Professor Juma started that in 1988. We celebrated 30 years just the other day, and I've been on that board for 6 years. The very last email I got from Professor Juma was talking about his dreams for that organization. A few weeks later, he passed on. He also mentioned South Korea. If you noticed, His Excellency was in South Korea the other day. About a month before that, my colleague and I had been invited to present the South Korean government. And I specifically showed the email that Professor Juma had sent me, and he mentioned 3 PhD students and an institution called KAIST, and some work around Konza innovation we are trying to touch on with Brian. Why am I telling you all this? I've not done a count. I usually know exactly how many people are in the room. I want to approximate about 30. We were working with about 25 to 35. In 5 years, mark my words, I strongly suspect each of us in this room will be doing something cutting edge in Konza. 70 kilometers from Nairobi. There are critics of Konza. I may have been one of them once in a while. What do you do 70 kilometers away from Nairobi in an empty, barren space? The innovation hub is in Nairobi, so you should be doing things in Nairobi, and that's why we are here. You started off on Gong Road, Prestige, opposite Prestige Plaza, Meki Place, Natu Court. Many people argue that's where the innovation system is anchored, and that's the story Juma had written about, something along those lines. He was talking about the equivalent of Silicon Valley. Each of us in this room, in 5 years, I strongly suspect, will be a core part of the innovation system in Konza. And that brings me to the tail end of my remarks. I'll invite Jackie just to reflect a little bit more on the same. Arts has been an interesting place. I have learned about governance, how you govern non-profits. I serve in our governing council, executive committee, finance committee. And remember I mentioned, what did Professor Juma ask me to study? Execution, operations. So for my colleague at Arts, if there are some things I do well, the credit actually goes to Professor Juma. He not only equipped me with the skills, but he did the introduction. For my BCom students in the room, both current and former, and I'll call you my BBIT student, Eddie, I did IDPM all those years back, and then which became IMIX, which became DBIT, which has resulted in BBIT, 1996. My students in the room, the gentleman in the front introduced himself. What did he say his name was? Sam who? Gikandi. Who is Sam Gikandi? Of which company? Africa is Talking. He's also the founder. Anytime you're on the street and you run into Sam, do nothing else. Just tell him, hey, Sam, you did a fantastic job hosting us. I promise you, you'll get an internship. And don't worry, Sam, there are not enough spaces now, but where it will be in 5 years, and Hilarion, this will be a drop in the ocean. We'll need more people. That's how Professor Juma used to talk. So he would tell us things and we would wonder, Prof, what are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. Arts also allowed me to tell Professor Juma goodbye. I spoke on behalf of Arts as a governing council member. We didn't have an executive director substantive then. I went all the way to Port Victoria. Thank you very much, Mukhtar Ogle. You helped with that farewell on behalf of government. And Professor Mugabe, my supervisor. there was a team that worked together to give Prof a befitting farewell. Ajulu knows where Port Victoria is. So for the whole Strathmore contingent, next time Ajulu is telling you he's going to Ushago, I don't know what you call it nowadays. Is it still Shags, Ushago? Shags. When Ajulu tells you he's going to Shags, Port Victoria, please accompany him. Because Angela will tell us about something absolutely fascinating that needs your skills. So we need them in Konza, we will need them in Port Victoria. You tell us about the hub and why they need to go there. Calestous Juma, by virtue of arts, as part of doing that farewell, I liked a phrase that Brian used, intellectual father. In my remarks, I talked about being an intellectual orphan. So there are times your mentors, those ahead of you, will not be there, and you'll become maybe a business orphan, a government orphan, a university orphan, whatever it is. And you know what? Just by saying it, Professor Mugabe walked into my life. Professor Mugabe is related to Calestous, took over at the Africa Center for Technology Studies, and for the last 3 years has been my PhD supervisor. And for my students, if you think I make you work hard, hey, do not be scared of hard work. Eddie, whenever I give you a hard time as an entrepreneur, I wanted to say you can blame Professor Juma, but rather say celebrate Professor Juma. I've tried to mirror for you who Professor Juma was for me and how that's happening through Professor Mugabe. In closing, my current area of focus is technology and innovation management. So Sam is trying to replicate this magic that's happening here. Angela has been saying we will finish with a crescendo. And Angela, I think I can confidently say your visit is ending on a crescendo. It's Angela's first time in Kenya. It's Angela's first time in Nairobi. And it's very fitting that this is the audience welcoming Angela. I'm going to invite Jackie. Jackie wants to say some brief remarks on behalf of the board, on behalf of CJLF. Your reflections on Juma, building on what you had said earlier, and then you'll have the privilege of inviting Angela to speak to us today as our key guest. My parting shot, remember I asked you to write 2 things. What was the first thing? Who you are right now. What was the second thing? Who you want to be, or who you desire to be, or who you think you should be. I want you to strike off just one line, what you wrote, who you want to be. Just take a moment and strike it off. After these things I have said, if anything I have said has made sense, I want you to write a new word on who you want to be. And after Jackie speaks and after Angela speaks, I want you to keep striking off. It's okay if you write the exact same word. I want you to keep writing. Because my living legacy, as I celebrate the late Professor Juma, one of my key intellectual fathers, my intellectual father at the Kennedy School, is that he put it in me, this notion, that gap between who I am and who I want to be is infinitesimally small. There's a word like that. The opposite of infinite, when you're going infinite in the smaller direction, not the big, I want to believe is infinitesimal. If the word doesn't exist, we can add it to the dictionary. That's what I want you to walk away with here. And for the tech team I spoke to earlier, specifically Sam, Kevin, Anne, and Oliver, for the techies in the room, there's a world of development waiting for you. Not development coding, development being kind, development doing something for society, development solving problems. And Angela, as you speak, I hope you will leave us with a big enough development challenge that we can deploy all this tech talent, all this business talent, all this everything talent, channeling the spirit of Professor Juma, and his living legacy through all of us who are in the room, that he touched even ever so briefly some, and Isaac Nyamolo, who was at those Thanksgiving gatherings, and my colleagues in the Harvard MIT CJ alumni group, leave us with a challenge that we can take on. Sam, I had requested you and Isaac through Belden to hold Angela's hand. I don't know who will hold the right and who will hold the left. Africa is talking and Zeraki, Sam and Isaac. Let's see if we can solve this challenge. Angela, do you have a deal? Will you leave us with a challenge? Great. So I hand, thank you very much. So over to you, Jackie. Something small as you welcome Angela. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Martin. Please you can hear me. So, first of all, it was very impressive to see you just name every student. That was very impressive. I'm learning from you. So, yeah. And as a challenge, I'm going to add a challenge after. Maybe Angela will give one, but it was my first time going to Port Victoria last week with Angela. And if you're a student, I'm a student too, and I kept thinking about, wow, I've learned so much about innovation and development institutions, but how come this area is really, why is it left out? Why all the systems not working? So I kept thinking of, that would be a very good case study for any students. Give them a project. Daktari, give them a project, let them go and study for Victoria and give us answers that we might use in CJLF.
Yeah, and Jackie, Angela today was actually the Vice Chancellor at Stratford, Dr. Vincent Ogutu. So on Dr. Vincent Ogutu's behalf, I've received that and I'll pass it on to him to pass to all our students. Dr. Ogutu, I'll make sure to follow up. Online. Oh, you need to mention.
Oh, we talked about it.
Okay. I'm talking to him online for people who keep looking at the back.
So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm a PhD candidate at Harvard Law School, and I study law and political economy of technology, informal markets, and development. So that's just a very short background, but I initially started working, after my law degree, I worked at Strathmore, civics. And my role, I was a research assistant, and my role was to go out to the field, talk to startups. In those days, it was 2016. Startups were just popping up everywhere in the world. So my job was to go talk to different startups, ask them why they use IP, when and why not, all that stuff. So they use or non-use of intellectual property. And as it was very interesting to talk to startups then, because when I started reflecting on what I was doing then, I should mention that I was doing 2 jobs at the time, not intentionally. It was just that my employer at Strathmore allowed me to keep my law firm job, so I would go to Strathmore in the evening. And in the law firm job, I was doing intellectual property. I was in the intellectual property department, filing patents, copyright, trademarks. And what I would notice is that in the patent office, we were a mailing office basically. We would get patent applications from the US, from Germany, and they come already filed. And your job is to take that form already filed, fill it and write, I was a Kaplan instruction, fill it and write Kaplan instruction as filed, and then take it to KIPI. KIPI is the Kenya Industrial Property Institute. Basically, it was mailing. Just take it, drop it there. So I kept wondering, okay, then why it was not, intellectual property was not as fun as I thought it would be. But in contrast to what I was doing at Stratford, the actual talking to innovators and asking them, why do you use IP? Do you use IP first of all? Why do you not? Then I saw, I saw the contrast between the lack of filings by Kenyans at the law firm and the fledgling innovation that I was seeing in the startup space. So that to me presented a contrast, and I started to question what's the role of intellectual property in development. And that led me to do a master's at Harvard Law School. But like I said, when I went there, I looked through the syllabus, and we were allowed to take courses at every other school. And I saw Harvard Kennedy School, Professor Calestous Juma. I actually did not know who was teaching at Harvard, but I had heard of the name. So I went, I cross-registered, I went to class on the first day. As I was 25, I have to add that because many of you are probably 23, which was very young. But I don't know whether that is young. So that is young. To me right now, that is young. So I was very fresh, very, I don't know, naive, it's my first time out of Kenya. So I'm feeling small. And listening to all these accents and people asking me to repeat what I'm saying. Like, I've never been able to pronounce the word burger, like in the US. Like, I don't know, but I've never been able to pronounce that word. But okay, the reason I'm saying this is because when I stepped into Calestous class, and we just to hear a Kenyan accent at Harvard, just in the US, this person of power has the accent like mine. It feels, there's something about that. I felt home immediately. I felt home. And the fact that, I don't know who, was it Omukar or Martin who said that we were all in a circle. Oh, it was Brian. Right. Yeah, we were all in a circle. So it was very welcoming, I would say. And he was nurturing us, because I did not know anything about innovation. I was just like super interested in it. In fact, I remember asking him in class, because it was fascinating when you're learning something you're very interested in, and it just fascinates you. I was extremely fascinated, and I would put up my hand and ask, Professor, you're giving us all these examples, because I think that class is really big on case studies. You give case studies from Taiwan, from Costa Rica with the bananas. I don't know whether you guys ever heard about the bananas in Costa Rica, but yeah, about a university in Costa Rica. But he would give all these examples, and then I would raise up my hand and say, but why haven't we ever done this? Because it seems like all the information, institutions, that we have a roadmap of what innovation and development should be, so why are we not doing it, Anyway, he was like, I'm not in this class, But yeah, that's what he said. But it's still, I still think about it, and that's why in my PhD I really, really think about how people, how institutions, developers, tech developers like you and you all, how people think about solving problems. How do they do it? Does it work? What makes it work? What makes it not work when it doesn't work? All that institutions. I'm super interested in that. But that's a very long story of just introducing how I met Calestous and how I interacted with him in my initial introduction to innovation and development as a subject area of interest to me. So another thing I would say about him is that he was very warm, and I remember, I'm saying this because I'm still a student, so I give the student perspective. I remember in his class, we were writing a paper and we were supposed to make presentations the following day, and I think I'd spent all night writing that presentation. We have this habit of last minute stuff. So I don't think I had slept. So when I went to make the presentation, I was very, when you haven't slept, you just remind them. I don't know, autopilot, I have no idea. But I've tried, and he was like, Chucky, sit down and then try again. And then I tried again. And I felt, I know when you really want to do well and you don't do well, you feel bad, right? And I met him after class and he said, don't worry, these students, everyone you see here has taken a class in public speaking and communication skills, because every other person at Kennedy School was, I think, in a public policy program, and they were supposed to take a communications class. He really made me feel, oh, it's okay, like those, it's not even a big deal. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the kind of man he was. He was very warm, he was a nurturer. And so, I'm going to summarize my reflections on who Calestous was based on my interaction with him and previous things I did. So the first thing I would say is that he was a connector. He was definitely a connector. He would speak to him and you say, I'm doing this and this and this, and he immediately jump at, you should talk to this person, have you looked at this? And even the Thanksgiving dinners that he held them purposefully so that we students could meet each other. And he had African students from Harvard and African students from MIT, and he just wanted us to have a place to interact and talk and have sessions. We actually had a session. Like I remember during the dinner we had breakout sessions. We would talk about what we are doing just so we can find linkages. And what's interesting is that the last Thanksgiving dinner he held, he wasn't there. He was sick. He was not there. He just talked to us on FaceTime and encouraged us to, talk, connect. Hopefully, I still talk to one person I met there, so I'd say that he was a connector, and he really wanted this to work. And then something else he did, he just made, I don't know whether this was because it was his last days, I'm not sure, but if you told him, I want to do this and this, I want to be this person, like he asked us to think about who we want to be. You say whatever you want, whatever answer you give, he will connect you. Like he will write emails introducing you to whoever you need to talk to make things happen. And I remember at the time I was also organizing the African Development Conference, which is a conference held at Harvard every year. And it was very interesting because he would introduce me to big people. Like I'm just a student. Like I'm just an ordinary girl. But he would use you send an introductory email. You and say that Mukisa Kitui. Imagine I am 25. I'm just a lawyer. I don't even know what I'm doing, and then I now have to talk to Mukisa Kitui, and I have to be invited to the conference. And he did that to introduce me to Mukisa Kitui, introduced me to people at the World, the chief economist at the World Intellectual Property Organization. He just made things happen. He really, and he would do it in a way that was not extremely formal. He would text me. In fact, I remember I had his texts. I still had his text messages from the last few days before he died, maybe a week before, of him telling me that somebody has confirmed that they're coming to the conference. It was just like he was so generous with his connections, and yeah, I count myself very fortunate to have met him. Something else he did, was a teacher everywhere. Like, of course he's teaching in class, but his Twitter, I don't know what happened to his Twitter account, I'm not sure, but he had 100K plus followers, and I think every now and then he would introduce a topic and just write it all down, write a thread on how to make things happen, like how to connect this idea to that institution, to that other thing. Yeah, it was a great, I don't know what happened to the Twitter, maybe Calestous Juma Legacy Foundation should re-own it? I don't know, maybe. Another thing is that I already talked about him being a natural, but he was a thinker, and we've already seen, I don't know whether you've seen his books, but he was also a man full of ideas, in the sense that, anything, in fact, he was thinking all the time. I was actually worried for him, seriously, because when you meet him in his office, and you're talking about something, like something small, maybe you mentioned, I don't know, maybe the numbers, or something small, and he will think of ideas, and he'll start giving you solutions immediately, and you'll see his enthusiasm when talking, So I was worried after I kept wondering whether this man sleeps, because he kept, sharing ideas and thinking about how to make it happen. In fact, I remember in his class we had a specific session on the art of persuasion. It was like, yes, these ideas, some of them do not work. You have to learn how to convince policymakers. Just like that. Yeah, he taught us how to convince policymakers. Yeah. So as a board, I represent. I don't know. I always like to say that I represent the students, because I was in his last class. I was a student in the last class he ever taught. And I don't know what the plans are, but it would be good to always have a student represented, or just to mirror his intellectual prowess and his contribution to students all over the world. Yeah. So other than that, I'll just say that we as a board, we are all connected to Calestous in one way or another. we all share his vision, and we're also like connected to wanting to see his vision for what Victoria come to be. And yeah, we're spreading it all over to new students, so you can also take it out and hopefully join us, help us, take up those challenges in class, volunteer your skills, and we'll teach those the women in Port Victoria or the young people there who need to learn tech skills. Yeah, so we hope you see, do internships at Calestous Legacy Foundation, right? You can go to some, you don't come to Calestous Legacy Foundation. Seriously, yeah, we need all these skills, and yeah, so that's all I'm going to say, and I'm now giving to Angela or Martin.
Yeah, actually what I want to ask Teddy to come and take my place. So for the students and the youth, if you are not yet married and you don't have a family, for us we have a tradition. So we call Friday family night. I have a 5-year-old boss who I promised by 7:40 I would take the refreshments for family night. We had agreed with Teddy, who has just left the Kusi festival, that he would handle the tail end of the conversation. And it is symbolic. Teddy is the chief storyteller. So, Angela, Africa Stocking. And I want to leave you in the hands of Africa Stocking. And for the Strathmore colleagues, I leave you in the hands of the CJLF, Calestous Juma Legacy Foundation. I hope I have interested you, piqued your interest. Some, I leave Strathmore students on the business side, and they bring the very best of what Eddie brings on the tech side. I leave them in your able hands. I hope we are starting something magical, something in the mold of what we do with AITI. Thank you very much for hosting us. Make sure you mingle. Amadi Speciosa, Sam is ready to give you a solution. You're getting it from the best of the best. Nyambura, Sam is ready to give you a solution. You're getting it from the best of the best. Sam, give us your best tech talent to help solve some of our tech challenges. Angela, Karibu, and I'll allow Teddy to be the one who welcomes you.
So wait, Martin, before you go, what year was that you were working tech support in Chicago?
That was between 2001 September to around June, July 2006.
Interesting, because I think I might have talked to you on tech support, because I talked to this guy and I lived in Chicago on tech support, and he introduced me to every person in the company.
Yeah.
That must have been you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Our regards to Alison, Eric, and the
Yes,
entire
I
team.
definitely will.
And we hope you'll
Pass
come.
on.
We hope you'll come back.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Martin,
Yes.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you everybody for being here. I just came from Costa Rica to the Karura Forest, and also met Ilha Indirango there after a long time. She sends her greetings. She was the third CEO of Africa Stocking, and now she's a co-founder of something called Jacob's Ladder. So she sends her greetings. And but I wanted Sam to give this to Martin before Martin, because it's actually symbolic. So it's the only thing that I asked for Sam to do. So this is a Masai sugar. Inside it's written Martin Mbaya, Ilarian, hyphen, Africa is talking 2022. So Sam, because that symbolizes a connected world and a connected Africa that Sam is leading us in doing now and in the coming years.
Thank you.
So Martin, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Sam and Teddy, thank you very much. Sam, we hope you'll come and speak to the next cycle of students I'll be teaching in 2023. Earlier this year, we hosted the other Africa is Talking co-founder, Eston Kimani. He's met some of the business students here. So students, when I was talking of the Africa is Talking co-founders, they are here. and you are here with the CEO. So it can be done. Those things we've been talking in class, Eddie, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome you to Nairobi.
Thank you.
I know it's late in the evening, and we're all curious to hear from you. And I'll just share a little bit about my experience with Prof Calestous Juma. Then I'll ask you to speak to the audience. My name is Ted Wari. So in the early days of the company, Prof Calestous Juma student, her name is Amanda Ombaka invited me to speak about Africa Stocking at the Harvard Business School annual event, typically done in February and March. And the topic, I believe at that time, was a connect to Africa. And I arrived actually very late from Boston Logan Airport. I went straight to the talk and delivered what I needed to deliver. We had a fundamental belief that Africa Stocking will make it in the next coming years, even if some people doubt it. And as I was leaving even the event, he gave me a book that was about something harvest.
The new harvest.
The new harvest. And I think it's what we are discussing right now in Kenya as a debate for both either GMO or this kind of thing, that I hope at some point we'll have a robust discussion here about whether GMO is the way to go or not the way to go. But the science of it, not just what people not guesswork. So hopefully invite you when you're here next, or even through Zoom, and you can discuss with the community. In celebration of Calestous Juma. Martin and I had the opportunity to go for his funeral in Port Victoria. I was amazed at how many books were there at his funeral, as he had written on papers, because they were shared with everybody who was there. And I don't know how many of you here have read books by Calestous Juma, even then. Is there any book? Which one is your favorite? I see. So what do you remember, or was your highlight in reading that book?
Mostly about how to overcome constraints of culture
Yes.
in embracing new things.
So that's what doesn't happen. So that's what doesn't happen, because he was basically saying there's a culture of poverty, isn't it? But if you don't address it the way it's supposed to be, because you remain where you are. You see that? But I urge you to read any of his books that he has written, if you can. And because we live in Kenya and in Kenya now, there's one very important lesson that he taught me. When I went to Harvard at that time to speak, I asked him, everywhere people are saying that Kenyans are the best people if they're not trying to rip you off. That's what somebody told me. That's what somebody told me. And I was like, wow, really? Where do you get that from? But I asked Calestous Juma, when does corruption start, or how does corruption start? But furthermore, I asked him, what's the difference between corruption and a thief? Saying, when you're corrupting another person, is when you actually give the money before a service is rendered. But a tip is what you give people in gratitude of the service of the work that has already been done. I hope you follow. I hope you follow. There's a big difference. But that's what you believe in. So we thank you today for coming here at Africa Stocking. We honor the legacy of Prof Calestous Juma, the man who was once a teacher from Iraqi, who rose to become a professor at Harvard. So please share with us your reflections on him and his leading light and his legacy remains. So thank you for visiting us.
Thank you. And thank you, Sam and team, for having us all here tonight, being such great hosts, for a great topic. Now, I can't really actually speak better to who Calestous was as a person than those who have already come before me. Because I never want to overstate my own relationship with Calestous. I knew him, we knew each other. I attended several of the Harvard African Development Conferences where he was chair, and I listened to his speeches. I interacted with him on Twitter, which, by the way, we don't have access to his Twitter account because we don't own our data. So.
Those is in town, we can ask him.
Yes. So, I knew Calestous a bit through my organization at the time. I was the director of operations for a very, very tiny foundation called African Food and Peace Foundation. They still exist today, but sort of different from back then. But so I was the director of operations, and we worked on a project in Uganda, actually a very innovative project, an integrated rural development project that was extremely, extremely community-based. And Calestous wrote about it in his book, The New Harvest. So here we are, this small team working around a little kitchen table in someone's house in Concord, Massachusetts. We're just trying to raise money to support this work in Uganda that we really, really believed in, and we found out that Calestous had written about it in his book. We didn't know, because he was a seeker of innovation, right? So he didn't know about us, we didn't know that he'd written, but when we found out, actually it was my kid's babysitter said, hey, this guy Calestous Juma is coming to town, he's gonna do a talk, you guys should go. And then we found out we looked him up, we saw they'd written about our project, and we went and met him. So from that day, we went to meet him. He just welcomed us with open arms. He was so warm, so generous with his connections, his teachings, his mentorship, and more to my executive director, because she was the leader of our organization and I was the director of operations, but she would always, it was really just the two of us. And she would say, Angela and I. He'd say, what's this Angela? Let me meet this Angela. Yeah, so I met him a few times, but I really benefited, sort of one step removed, but really for our foundation, we were tiny. And he opened doors for us. We grew fivefold over about 3 years. Really went from just around a kitchen table to we've got an office. He was introducing us to Odinga, he was introducing us to Dr. Rugunda, he was introducing us just like the others have shared. He would say, oh, have you talked to so-and-so? About this, and Dr. Rugunda came and visited our project in Uganda. We couldn't believe he was a former prime minister. For those of you who don't know, he was the prime minister at the time. And this was just, to us, so mind-blowing that he was so generous. And it paid off because our organization really grew. So I think it's for me to really just talk about the Calestous Juma Legacy Foundation and how we are providing a platform for his living legacy. And by the living legacy, I really mean you. Even if you didn't know Calestous Juma, as Martin explained, Calestous was his intellectual father, and you can think of Calestous as your intellectual grandfather, because so much of what happens today in how science, technology, and innovation in Africa relates to development goes back to Calestous. He was the one who brought it into the forefront. He was the one who began writing about it in the newspapers. He was the one who began talking about it with the politicians and academic research and writing, and he was the one. There were others, but he was the one. And so that's why I say that you all and we all who care about Africa's development, who think that science, technology, and innovation have a large role to play, we all owe Calestous. And you are his living legacy. So we want to provide a way for that living legacy to actually play out in real life, in, not just being it and internalizing it, but having it help Africa. So the boards, Jackie and the other members of the board, which includes Calestous' widow and other friends, colleagues, his mentees, we've come up with a program, a mission. Our mission is to promote and apply science, technology, and innovation to drive sustainable development in Africa. So I think we're in the right place here, right? Yeah. So as part of that, we're taking an international approach, and we have a local grassroots approach, and we have other approaches as part of our programmatic menu that are more international and leverage more of the international network. But I want to just focus to tell you about our local grassroots approach, because Calestous was a big champion for the grassroots and for the people, community-based development coming from the community itself. So Calestous was born in Port Victoria, on the shores of Lake Victoria. And his family lived there, and he lost almost all of his brothers and sisters along the way. I think he was one of 12. He has one sibling still surviving. She lives there now. And as part of his parting wishes, his parting directive, he asked for his friends and family to do something for Port Victoria. He always wanted to, but he didn't get the chance to really make it happen in his lifetime. And his son Eric, I'm gonna share, his son Eric told his mom, so I wasn't there, but this is what Allison has told me, that Eric said to her, Dad worked his whole life to see development happen, to see science, technology, innovation play a big role, and he didn't get to see it happen in Port Victoria, and he left the hardest part to us, which is to do it as part of his legacy. So he gave us a roadmap for what he wanted to happen in Port Victoria. So we're trying to make that happen, and so I guess I'll just skip to the good part, because so you don't need to hear about how we deliberated about what we're going to do. But yesterday, or 2 days ago, in Port Victoria, we opened the Calestous Juma Innovation and Resource Hub. It has 12 computers. It has 12 computers that were facilitated by the African Center for Technology Studies, which, as you heard previously, Calestous founded. That organization has 12 computers, and we're currently training local youth who have an aptitude for ICT to be our hub staff. So we're currently training them in coding, and we're evaluating them based on their ICT skills, their ability to learn, their ability to be coaches, mentors, and we're planning to, in about 6 months or so, when we build up our own internal organizational capacity at the hub, we will launch a more full programmatic, set of things that we're going to train on. And we're taking a train of trainers model. So the trainees that we have right now will be our staff. They'll go out into the secondary schools and do training on whether it's coding or general computer skills, entrepreneurship, business skills, financial literacy. Our target demographics are those who are the most marginalized, women, girls, youth. We really want to help the community identify the skills that they need, and we'll plan to do that through a visioning process, where we work with them to, identify the life that they want to see for themselves, and then we'll help them identify the skills that they need in order to get that. So we're really focusing on capacity building there locally. So that's what we're doing in Port Victoria, and we're in conversation with Strathmore and several other institutions about having volunteers come, interns come, work on projects. There are many, without fail, almost every person I spoke with who had some stake in business there said that they needed financial literacy. And that was one of the main things that they needed training on. which I know a lot of the students in the room tonight can help with. They need business planning, they need financial literacy, they need entrepreneurship, they need leadership, they need some other soft skills too, which I know that at Strathmore you learn, so that's, we see some alignment there. And I talked with your VC today, and we all got very excited about the possibilities. So that's our grassroots approach. We plan to do some things in policy literacy too, at higher levels in the government and even at the municipal levels around science, technology, and innovation, blah, blah, blah policy, right? So let's not talk about that. And then we're also just like Calestous, he's in, we try to take inspiration from who he was as well, and use our platform to convene people, to connect people. And to elevate the great work that people are doing in science, technology, and innovation in Africa. So we've hosted a seminar series around various topics in STI, and we did an essay competition for young innovative thinkers that we completed, and that was fun. And then finally, the last thing that we really take as part of our core programming is to just make sure that Calestous' original thought work stays as part of the ongoing dialogue of science, technology, and innovation for Africa's development, because he was such a great thinker, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So, we're going to keep bringing it back, making sure that the catalog is available. His autobiography is about to be published in a few days. So it's his story of coming up from Port Victoria, really, from a very impoverished situation, very unstable, set of circumstances for him until, and it's a bit of a thank you to all the people who helped him along the way. So it's a very accessible read, and we're excited to launch it. So let me stop there and see if there's discussion, questions. How we go forward from here.
So, thank you very much for your remarks, Angela. So, is there anybody with a question or sets of questions to Angela, or to Sam, or to Gail? Anybody, or to Jackie? Yeah, could you tell us your name, and then you could ask any question?
Thank you. My name is Anjuroge. I'm a user experience designer. I came across the works of Calestous Juma this year. So when I heard you people are coming over, I was excited. I was like, all right. I don't know what stars are these, but clearly they are aligning. So one of the books that I've been going through is Emergent Africa. And there's a place where he says catalytic institutions are not enough. Like having institutions in different local areas, that's not enough to spur the development that we are looking to have in place. So I'm wondering, what kind of motivational factors do you intend to put in place on the ground to ensure that what you begin is going to be sustainable over the next 5, 10, 20 years to come?
Thank you for that question. I really wish Calestous was here to answer that. What did he say in his book? No, just kidding. So I think one of the main things is really the network that we can bring to this initiative in Port Victoria. I say we want to bring the world to Port Victoria and Port Victoria to the world. And it's not just Port Victoria. We have plans to scale beyond the town, to the region, to beyond. I want us to remain humble and not say, we're going to transform all of Africa, because it's just not something you want to go. I don't want to go there. So I would say, to inspire, to keep the motivation would be the connections that people are going to be availed of, the stories they're going to hear, the information that they're gonna have access to that they didn't have before. And, you know, I think that'll all go into the mix of the soup, and, you know, we'll just keep bringing, I believe, and I know Calestous believe that the motivation is really in there, and we take away the barriers. You know, we provide the things that the people wanted, and the development will happen. Jackie wants to add, please.
Another thing we're doing, I'm not sure whether you asked because Angela mentioned we just opened a hub. Is that right? Is that the institution? Assuming that's the institution, I would add two things to Angela's response. One is that we're very context specific in whatever programs we come up with at that hub. So I think she mentioned tech, ICT skills, but we're also doing a lot more with thinking. Let's say we're thinking about incorporating fish farming, which is what that community does. It's like the fish farming and insect farming. So we are also, that's one thing, being context specific, and that means making sure we're not disrupting the social fabric. So we're just working with the social fabric. Another thing we're doing is we're working with local institutions, thinking about the gaps that exist within that ecosystem. So we've had like workshops that we're planning to have, like more workshops with institutions that are in the area, like the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Institute, the Lake Victoria
Fisheries Organization, some aquaculture business development program. There are so many institutions which think about developing Port Victoria and Bunyala and the Sierra generally, like just the Lake region. Things don't work. So we are questioning what's happening. How can we work with what we have, and how can we incorporate not just local institutions but local farmers, you know, change agents. Who are the change agents in this community, and how can we work with them to incorporate this vision that we have? I don't know whether that answers the question, but that's how it answers. And let me just draw your attention to this pin that I'm wearing here. Does anybody know what it's made of? I know you can't see it very closely. Yes? Yeah, it's made of fish scales. So this is an innovation from some women, I think in Homa Bay, which is, you know, a little bit around the bend from Port Victoria, but you know, they're taking things that are typically just waste products from the fishing industry, and creating a new product that is then marketable, unique, and really, really desirable. It's very nice. It's very nice, unique, and it's a talking point. You can say, "Oh, what do you know what this is made of?" Right?
I want to ask you, is that yellow mustard grass? What's it called?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm teasing. So,
A match. I was at the Harvard African Development Conference when that picture was taken. Yeah.
It matches the color of the sun.
Ah.
And I think Professor Juma is actually very busy facing the sunset, actually where he's very positive.
He is.
From the film, and I thought that was very meaningful of a grand African man to ride facing the sunset. So I think that's majestic. So if any of you at some point visit Port Victoria, we could pay your tribute or homage at where he's buried, because I believe in the idea of globalizing local heroes and also localizing global heroes like Barack Obama, Nelson Mandela, etc. It's very important to pay a visit to where he's buried. I don't know what's the title of his book. It is an autobiography, no biography. Or did he write it?
It's an autobiography. He was writing it up until the day before he died. It is called The University Drop-In.
Could you tell us, without giving away the whole book, could you tell us, because you also Steve Jobs dropped in, so
I'm not sure if I remember that story. Honestly, I've been in Kenya for 2 weeks.
Yes.
I fly out tonight.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I
But the
can.
book will be out in the US or you can?
It's going to be digital, so to start.
So you're gonna do
Oh yeah,
price?
Thursday. I think it's around $20 US.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'd like to share it with the community.
Definitely.
And thank you very much for that. Does anybody of you have another question? Or could you tell us your name and we'll ask the question?
My name is Julian. Together with Flammo. My question is with regards to how you have these guys make their local solutions become global. So one thing that we noticed, and she's mentioned about case studies, is how we use our own traditions to come up with modern technology. So one example that I always like giving is called a pencil. So a pencil is an instrument that is used to make furniture. So it's just like a cutting machine to shape the wood. And the idea came from when you go for a butcher and they cut meat. There's not the machine that they just and they cut the meat. So when they went to the butcher, saw it, then went back. And it's from Caliban. In Caliban, you have a lightweight industry. I won't call it that way. So he went and they built the machine, and now he's selling to the local, so that now they're able to do better furniture. As you guys are in Kisumu, now for him, he's able to explore that kind of technology to other countries, in Uganda. So that's a localized solution taken abroad, right? I'm asking about the same and how you guys are doing it there. Even for us as students, I look at it as we build a solution in Kenya for our solution, for a problem here. And then there's another country with a similar kind of problem. If I take that solution there, we may learn from my friend that we may use it and how to do it. So I want to learn how do you do it for something like that?
Well, you can ask me that again in about 5 years, because we're just starting, really, honestly. We opened just the other day. And again, like through our connections and our network, Calestous really just knew everybody. So my goal as the executive director would be to do my best to emulate Calestous' networking so that when something comes up in Port Victoria, that's an innovation, a solution. Like I've been wearing this pin for like days because I want everybody to know about it. So whenever, and I'm going to come across the right person who's going to see this and say, I can market that. Connect me with those women, right? So, not just me, but the board and our advisory council. We have people at Boston University, MIT, Harvard, the African Union. We're really just like in all of these institutions. Somebody mentioned Emergent Africa. We have Francis Mangani is on our advisory council. He's the one working in integrated regional development in East Africa. So I think just it's about finding that right connection for that product or to take it to market in the market that it belongs in. Of course, not everything's going to apply because, as you said, local solutions are often going to apply just to the local context. But, I'll do my best to emulate Calestous and find them the connections. Oh, have you talked to so-and-so? I'm going to get really good at saying that.
Thank you. So, for the gentleman at the back, so often I happen to be a very good listener, and I like sometimes listening to conversations that people are making without making any commentary or even talking back. So one of these days, our CEO Sam Candy here said that I think there's a Google guy who was speaking, and he said that African Stocking is an ideas factory. Ideas factory. You follow? So he said that African stocking is an ideas factory, and what that tells you is that even what is doing with also Galarian, which is also part of African stocking, is that solutions are coming from you and I, also as Africans, and also with allies like you from Boston who are working with us, so that the platform that is being created is one to create a shared prosperity. And if you keep on visiting us, because do you have any product so far yourself? Or what's the name of your product? Yes. Have you ever had an opportunity or chance to be driven or to drive an electric car?
A number of times.
Which one?
I've driven the two-wheelers, which are quite popular in
Okay. Has any of your friends driven the Tesla? Okay, apart from the two-wheeler, because I don't know the consequences of accidents and all that. Has any of your friends or people you know driven a Tesla or any electric car?
Well, I've spoken to somebody who's driven a Tesla.
Yes.
An American trip.
Yes.
And it's here. So
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that when Martin is giving us about the vision of the future, he's saying in 5 years' time, they will have become a more grown organization. Galarian will possibly be in all the 50 plus countries in Africa. So keep on engaging us. I hope you signed up in the community so that you receive the different invites. We're here to stay. I think Sam is probably the director of a bank. I'm not sure if it's that bank or a different bank that says we're here to stay. So we are here to stay. We're not going. You say it's another one. We're not going anywhere out of Africa. So keep on with us, and we will see how we can work with you in the coming days.
Yeah, and I think what I'm also finding is quite interesting is like sometimes some of the innovations that I think are going to come out of Africa, they don't look like the innovations coming out of the West. Because, for example, today, and I was talking to Angela earlier just about, and jacking about this around conversations, and it's maybe you could allow this. So just some of the innovations are around how we relate with each other as Africans, and how we used to relate with each other before we were colonized. Before the West came and imposed their model of how to relate with each other on us. So, for example, traditionally, we used to be raised by a village, right? So when you're a child, you don't just relate with two parents, you relate with all the grown-ups that are part of your village, right? That is very innovative today, if you think about it. If you take that model to Boston, you change how they raise their kids. You change how they see relationships between them and their kids, and that's very different than what you see today. If you look at Facebook just promotes connections without trying to drive them in a certain direction that we know actually leads to a better raising their kids. Another example today was, for example, we were talking to a lady who is wondering why do banks ask for collateral that is in the form of, bring your title deed and this and that, when if you have three of us, and Eddie, she did say thing. Because Eddie and I actually came up with this, and I said, what is present? She said, there's three of us that know each other and show up at the bank, and one of us is asking for a loan, that's enough. That's enough, because the three of us are now saying, actually, Oliver deserves this loan. And Oliver, and I don't know if you guys watched Jemo you said, I think there's an episode that I can share with you guys, but yes, the three of them go to a job interview, and his two friends are there, and when Jemo says, I'm a hustler, his friends are like, yes, he's a hustler. By the way, me, I don't work on Saturdays. They're like, yeah, if he doesn't get to work on Saturdays, he's not going to show up. And if you pay me this much, you need to pay me more because I need to pay my guys, and they're like, yeah. So at the end of the day, you actually get a very accurate view of this person without burning electricity on blockchains. So those are innovations that we had as Africans, because I think Africans had a very deep understanding of what it is to be human and what it means to relate and to exist in an environment where there is no technology. But technology came and disrupted our entire worldview, and suddenly we're now being forced to relate in ways that don't make sense to us. If all of us here agree that something is true, why do we need technology to tell us that it's true? We all agree. So how can we promote those kinds of connections? Those are the kinds of innovations that I feel, if we are now able to create those kinds of platforms and create those kinds of and actually, I would love to go to Port Victoria, because it sounds like it's untouched. And those are the parts those are the people who will tell you, hey, this doesn't work, like this is how we do things. And if you can now break that into a platform and scale it, you might change a random village in Ukraine, and you find that people are actually now organizing differently. So sometimes we think innovation is what the West has defined as innovation, but actually, for us, there might be a whole other range of innovations, and if you go to different parts of the world, you can actually start to model how they relate into platforms that could change banking, that could change insurance, that could change, a lot of different things that today maybe give us anxiety. And things that give us anxiety actually we want to need to dig into and understand why we do things like this. And actually, with Calestous, this is just a comment. Since he wrote so much about his life, and you've seen ChatGPT, this AI that answers questions, why not feed all that into ChatGPT and start asking it questions? So how would Calestous, for example, think about, fish farming, and it will tell you a whole story, but it's telling you from Calestous' own view of the world. I think it's very fascinating that he kept writing, and I think that's something that at least I don't do enough. I hardly ever write, but it would be interesting to ask Calestous, because I think that would be tremendously, informative and would really help us get into how he actually modeled the world. And listening to his story, I see a lot of my story in him, in terms of how he came out and his whole view of you need to be generous and be kind. So maybe even as we're building something like Hilarion, we can consult Calestous.
Is that an AI? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So, thank you. In fact, I was doing this because I was supposed to, Angela, just to make you comfortable, these days we have an expressway to the airport, so you'll get to the airport.
Okay, because I have a flight tonight.
You'll catch it so that you're at ease. So Sam was saying this because I've been meaning to actually give Sam this quote, but the opportune time have not come, and has come today. So Graham has looked at it from ChatGPT. I was not even aware about it. So Graham, I asked Graham to say, check for me what was Chinua Achebe's quote on the village moonlight. So I'm going to read it. I was very privileged to go to Band College, and Chinua Achebe was my professor there. So I'm going to read this. Chinua Achebe's quote on the village moonlight is, Angela, you can imagine in Prof Victoria, in Busia. The moonlight on the village is a beautiful thing. It is a blessing. This quote is from his novel Things Fall Apart, spoken by the protagonist Okonkwo, as he reflects on the beauty of his village and the natural world around him. He actually goes further to say, the kingsmen don't gather in their neighbor's house because they cannot see the moonlight from their own house. They gather because they appreciate the community that their neighbors present to them. And that's what Sam is dreaming of doing in the area. And that's why I'm very happy that if we can create such a community using things that are holistically African, we can create even a better human race. So that's why I'm very impressed by that. And I carried also this book because that's actually would be a revolution that could touch so many other countries. And that's why I've carried this book. It's called Platform, How Networked Markets Are Transforming the Economy and How to Make Them Work for You, which is it's a revolution that we can also create with Hilarion. So we believe you can do that. So I'll present this to you so that you can lead the platform revolution, not any other kind of revolution, but a platform revolution for Africa and in remembrance of Calestous Juma. So Angela, I'd also write some to leave you an Hilarion blanket so that you remember us on this day of celebrating the late Professor Calestous Juma. And because you say Calestous Juma like people from the grassroots, I also want you to light this candle just in his remembrance. And I'm not a smoker, but I have this. So you light it, and Sam will come and drape her with this blanket. It's been branded Hilarion, Africa is talking.
Thank you. And the 5th anniversary of Calestous' passing is December 15th. We're hosting a virtual event. It'll be at 8 p.m. Nairobi time, and we'll make sure you all get. Actually, if you just go on our website, you'll be able to register for it. It'll be on Zoom virtually, and actually, Dr. Rubunda is our keynote speaker. So please come join us and celebrate Calestous' life with us. Thank you.
So we honor the late Professor Calestous Juma, an astute African and global intellectual who came from Iregi Teachers Training College as a teacher and rose to be a professor at the most elite university in the world, Harvard University. And he also remembered to build his home in Port Siwo to celebrate his foundation and his first executive director, Angela Christiana. May God bless you, and may God bless the legacy of Calestous Juma, and may he also work with Africa's talking to light and move Africa forward.
Teddy, please, present here. So we'd like to present.
Please, by all means, please come.
Hi everyone, this is Faith. It's the representative of the cohort, the BCom cohort, and we've come with this bundle. It's the Kenyan bundle. The BCom cohort that is with us today has decided to give to Angela, and we are grateful that you made it possible to come and actually have a conversation. I enjoyed the time we had yesterday, and I'm really happy that you came, and Martin having introduced us to the CJLM. So really happy. Thank you, Sam, for hosting us here as well, and thank you for the team as well. We are happy, and our joy cannot be contained. I can laugh, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is for you.
Thank you. Perfect. Does this mean I'm a Kenyan now?
Yes.
Yes.
You got to drink with the lady and sugar.
Yes.
I nominate Eddie.
So thank you. As Eddie is making his way.
Well, you didn't do this to Martin,
Yes.
so.
No.
Those were our instructions.
Oh, I see.
This is for Hilarion.
I see.
Yes.
Oh no, I don't. He's asking me if I have a knife. I don't carry knives because I have a matchbox.
Blankets,
So
the matches.
Angela, the blue denotes the blue economy and the lake Victoria.
Oh, thank
So
you.
and it's done beautifully. So may God bless you.
Nice.
Thank you very much. working with people from the grassroots. I bought, I was visiting a place in an arid place in Kenya called Balingo, specifically a place called Mogotio. And the women who were on the road, actually they had something of dough made by soapstone. So it's actually this. So I want you to put it in his office in Boston. And I come to Boston once in a while.
Yes.
Not as much as I did before. So I'll come and touch it.
Okay.
So that it gets touched with a bit of love from Africa Stock in Nigeria.
Thank you.
So God bless you. Thank you for visiting with us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.